U.S. President Donald Trump has suggested talks aimed at ending the war in Iran could resume over the next 2 days, after negotiations collapsed over the weekend. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon held their first direct diplomatic talks in more than 3 decades in Washington, aimed at securing a ceasefire. Despite the U.S. blockade of maritime traffic entering and leaving Iranian ports, U.S.-sanctioned ships, including a Chinese tanker, passed through the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are expected to hold talks in the coming days, focused on ending the U.S.-Iran conflict and reopening the critical waterway. The IMF has downgraded its outlook for the global economy due to the ongoing situation in the Middle East. But it maintains South Korea's 2026 economic growth forecast at 1.9%, unchanged from its projection in January. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. We begin today with U.S. President Donald Trump hinting that a second round of peace talks between the United States and Iran could resume over the next 2 days. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon held their first direct talks on a peace agreement in Washington. Our Cho Young-eun starts us off.
U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that a second round of talks between the United States and Iran could be happening over the next 2 days. Trump initially told the New York Post in an interview that the talks would likely take place in Pakistan. He added that Pakistan's army chief was doing an excellent job in facilitating the talks. The remarks come after the first round of the peace talks over the weekend ended without an agreement, with Iran's nuclear ambitions remaining a key sticking point for Washington. Trump also said he did not support reports that the U.S. has proposed a 20-year suspension of Iran's nuclear activity, emphasizing that he favors a permanent ban on enrichment. Meanwhile, Israel and Lebanon held their first direct diplomatic talks in decades in Washington on Tuesday. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who took part in the meeting, called it a historic opportunity to end the influence of Hezbollah in the region. The talks, which lasted for more than 2 hours, were aimed at securing a ceasefire amid ongoing cross-border fighting.
This is about bringing a permanent end to 20 or 30 years of Hezbollah's influence in this part of the world and not just the damage it's inflicted on Israel, the damage it's inflicted on the Lebanese people. We have to remember the Lebanese people.
Israel's ambassador to the U.S. said the talks showed that Israel and Lebanon are on the same side, and that the two countries are both united in liberating Lebanon from an occupation power dominated by Iran called Hezbollah. He added that the talks would continue within weeks, while the Lebanese ambassador said they were productive. The U.S. State Department also released a statement after the meeting, saying the two sides had productive discussions, and the meeting marked progress toward further direct negotiations. Cho Young-eun, Arirang News.
And tensions are rising in the Strait of Hormuz as U.S.-sanctioned tankers continue to transit despite a blockade ordered by U.S. President Donald Trump. Regional powers are now pushing for talks, warning the standoff could escalate and threaten global energy shipping routes. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
A U.S.-sanctioned Chinese tanker has tested President Donald Trump's new blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, successfully passing through the strategic corridor on Monday. The vessel, identified as the Rich Starry, traveled through the strait into the Gulf of Oman in its second attempt, according to shipping data. The tanker, carrying roughly 250,000 barrels of methanol, flies under a Malawi flag, though authorities there say it is not officially registered. Reports indicate the ship has a Chinese crew on board. The transit comes as the United States began enforcing a naval blockade aimed at restricting Iranian oil exports. Under the policy, U.S. forces are blocking access to Iranian ports and intercepting vessels suspected of paying tolls to Tehran. A second U.S.-sanctioned Chinese tanker also passed through the strait from the opposite direction and is now in the Persian Gulf, reportedly en route to Iraq to load fuel later this week. Beijing has strongly condemned the blockade, calling it irresponsible and dangerous. China's foreign ministry warned the move could undermine an already fragile ceasefire and further threaten the safety of ships navigating one of the world's most critical energy corridors. Despite the heightened tensions, maritime traffic through the strait continues. According to U.S. officials cited by the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, more than 20 merchant vessels, including cargo ships, container ships, and tankers, have passed through the waterway in the past 24 hours. Some ships reportedly turned off their tracking transponders in an effort to reduce the risk of potential Iranian attacks. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia is reportedly urging Washington to halt the blockade and return to negotiations with Iran, fearing the move could trigger broader escalation. Saudi officials warned that Tehran could retaliate by targeting other vital choke points, including the Bab al-Mandab Strait, a key route for Saudi oil exports to the Red Sea. Meanwhile, diplomatic efforts are gaining momentum. Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Egypt, and Turkey are expected to hold talks in the coming days, focused on ending the U.S.-Iran conflict and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. According to AFP on Tuesday, the foreign ministers of the four countries plan to meet on the sidelines of the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, scheduled for April 17th to 19th in Turkey. The meeting would mark their third round of discussions on broader regional issues, following a gathering in Islamabad late last month, where the Strait of Hormuz was also a central topic. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Seoul plans to provide Iran with $500,000 of humanitarian aid amid the ongoing Middle East crisis. The Foreign Ministry announced the decision on Tuesday, saying the support will be delivered through the International Committee of the Red Cross in response to requests from the United Nations and other international bodies. This marks South Korea's second round of assistance to the region since the outbreak of the conflict, with the first government-level aid package worth $2 million provided to Lebanon last month. During a phone call between Foreign Minister Cho Hyun and his Iranian counterpart last week, the two sides reportedly shared an understanding on the need for humanitarian assistance. And President Lee Jae-myung has vowed to streamline regulations for cutting-edge technology industries to allow them to perform all actions that are not specifically prohibited. Presiding over a meeting on regulations on Wednesday, President Lee called for the need to streamline unnecessary regulations in a way that fits the global standard to enhance the country's global competitiveness. The meeting took place after the Regulatory Reform Committee was renamed as a so-called Regulatory Rationalization Committee. It was attended by more than 60 participants, including government officials, lawmakers, and businesses. The IMF has downgraded its outlook for the global economy due to the ongoing situation in the Middle East. However, it maintained its forecast for South Korea made in January, citing the help provided by a supplementary budget as well as the boom in chip exports. Our Kim Do-yeon has more.
In its April World Economic Outlook released on Tuesday, the International Monetary Fund maintained South Korea's 2026 economic growth forecast at 1.9%. The figure remains unchanged from its January projection, standing firm despite a downgraded outlook for the global economy. South Korea's inflation rate for the year was projected at 2.5%. The IMF and the South Korean government note that while downward pressures persist from rising energy prices linked to the Middle East conflict, robust exports and the swift execution of a 26.2 trillion won or roughly $19 billion supplementary budget have cushioned the impact. Globally, the economic picture is darkening. The IMF lowered its 2026 global growth forecast to 3.1%, down 0.2 percentage points from its January projection. The agency cited a combination of surging energy prices, rising inflation expectations, and a flight from risk in financial markets as testing the global economy once again. Looking at individual economies, the Eurozone's growth outlook was cut by 0.2 percentage points to 1.1%, weighed down by the cumulative burden of energy costs. The U.S. economy also saw a slight downward revision to 2.3%. The most severe impact is concentrated in the Middle East and Central Asia, where direct disruptions to energy exports caused a sharp 2.0 percentage point plunge bringing growth down to just 1.9%. The IMF assesses that downside risks continue to dominate, particularly supply chain disruptions from the prolonged war, and advises governments to prioritize price stability and maintain fiscal soundness. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Import prices in South Korea surged in March, posting their sharpest increase in more than 28 years, driven by soaring global oil prices amid the Middle East conflict. Preliminary data from the Bank of Korea on Wednesday showed the import price index jumped 16.1% on month, accelerating sharply from a 1.5% rise in February. This marks the steepest increase since January 1998 and the 9th consecutive monthly gain since July of last year. On a yearly basis, import prices climbed 18.4%. The surge was largely fueled by a spike in Dubai crude, South Korea's benchmark, which soared nearly 88% on month to $128.52 per barrel in March. A weakening Korean won against the US dollar has also added to import costs, compounding inflationary pressures for the economy. Surviving high inflation has become a daily mission for many young people in South Korea. As the cost of dining out continues to soar, a digital platform known as the Geojimap is going viral. Our culture correspondent Chung Il-im shows us how.
Kim Min-jung, an English teacher living in Seoul, needs a quick lunch near Sangsu Station before her afternoon class. But as she checks the menu boards outside, most meals easily exceed 10,000 won. That's when she opens an app called Geojimap, a map showing a range of affordable restaurants on her phone to explore her options. She settles on a cozy Korean restaurant offering a full meal with side dishes and soup. This satisfying lunch costs her just 7,000 won, or about $4.76.
Eating out in Korea has become so expensive lately. It's a real burden to spend 10 or 20,000 won just for a quick lunch. On Geojimap, you can find these hidden gem restaurants that serve delicious food but aren't overly expensive.
Here at another affordable restaurant listed on the map, the average price per item on the menu is 7,000 won. Recent data shows that the average cost of a meal in Seoul surpassed 11,000 won, meaning customers here spend less. Because of this, many people are using the map to reduce daily spending.
In this era of high inflation, places like this have become essential for anyone looking for ways to cut back on food expenses.
I often visit this place because the food is cheap and tasty. I first came here on a school colleague's recommendation. It's actually a bit cheaper than the school cafeteria, but it tastes way better, so I end up coming here more often.
Roughly translating to beggar map, the platform traces its roots back to Geojibang, or beggar chat rooms. These are anonymous online communities where people share strict money-saving tips and scold each other for unnecessary spending. One of the members turned this into a tool, and the app and its associated website already have 1.2 million cumulative users.
I realized that saving on food is something everyone is interested in and can easily do. There was a lot of fragmented information scattered across the internet, so I thought it would be great to gather and visualize it. The restaurants registered on Geojimap are all shops without big advertising budgets, so I hope this app helps these small business owners.
Although born from the financial squeeze of the current economy, the map is proving to be a win, helping customers survive high inflation. Chung Il-im, Arirang News.
South Korea's southern port city of Busan is among the fastest aging major cities, with a growing share of senior residents. In response, city officials have begun rolling out employment programs that tap into the experience and empathy of older workers. Our Park Junan was there.
Hello, good morning.
A 75-year-old English-speaking tour guide is helping foreign tourists, directing them as they finish a cruise.
Being out here, meeting new people every day, guiding them and greeting them, really adds energy to my daily life. Although I've gotten older, I feel appreciated as a member of society. I'm grateful for that.
And when moving to the village health center, it is common to see older adults taking care of other older adults. Programs such as health surveys and exercise sessions help people stay active and in shape. Some work involves classifying waste medication or disposing of it properly, crucial to environmental safety.
What you're seeing here is part of a citywide senior job program in Busan with over 70,000 older people, about 10% of the elderly population taking part.
And this is just a few examples out of numerous types of jobs that senior workers can take part in.
We want to show that we are not simply recipients of help, but are active contributors who add value to the community. We hope citizens will see us not as retired elderly, but as professionals with experience and wisdom.
For Busan, the number of older adults has already outpaced the city's young population of 19 to 34-year-olds. For the city, being able to bring older adults to the workplace is a must rather than a choice.
If we approach older adults as social resources who can play a role as members of the local community, I believe employment programs like this can function effectively in cities around the world.
For many cities and the global economy, as the city shifts into a super-aged society, the case of Busan serves as a real-world testbed. 박준환, Arirang News, Busan.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. U.S. President Donald Trump's son, Eric Trump, who oversees the Trump family business empire, will accompany his father on a state visit to China next month. The White House is calling the trip personal, but critics are raising concerns over conflicts of interest. The Trump Organization spokeswoman said Eric Trump and his wife will join the May 14th to 15th visit in a personal capacity, and that Eric has no business ventures in China and will not participate in any private meetings. The trip is the first by a U.S. president to China in 8 years and is aimed at stabilizing relations between the world's two largest economies. Eric's appearance on the trip drew scrutiny as he serves as Chief Strategy Officer of American Bitcoin, a cryptocurrency mining venture with ties to Chinese equipment maker Bitmine. President Trump's nominee to lead the Federal Reserve, Kevin Warsh, has disclosed assets worth well over $100 million, putting him on track to become the wealthiest Fed chair in history. Warsh's financial disclosure on Tuesday reveals two investments worth more than $50 million each, along with dozens of holdings in artificial intelligence and crypto, many of which he has pledged to divest to comply with strict Fed ethics rules. His spouse, Jane Lauder of the Estee Lauder family, holds an estimated almost $2 billion in assets. Warsh has his confirmation hearing on April 21st, but Republican Senator Tom Tillis has vowed to block the confirmation until an investigation into current Fed Chair Jerome Powell concludes. Powell's term ends May 15th. In Turkey, a 19-year-old former student opened fire at a high school on Tuesday, wounding at least 16 people before killing himself as police moved in to apprehend him. The attack in the southeastern province of Sanliurfa saw the gunman open fire in the schoolyard before moving inside the building. 10 students, 4 teachers, 1 police officer, and a canteen employee were among the wounded. As of Tuesday, 1 teacher remains in serious condition. U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday turned on Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, one of his closest European allies, saying he was shocked by her and that she lacked the courage he thought she had. Trump accused Meloni of refusing to support U.S. efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and expecting America to do the job for her. This follows Meloni's comments on Monday, where she publicly called Trump's attack on Pope Leo unacceptable. Meloni on Tuesday also suspended a military cooperation pact with Israel. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It really feels like summer showed up out of nowhere, even though today's highs are just a touch lower than yesterday when the capital saw the warmest temperatures of the season. Today will still feel like early summer. Seoul will be topping out at 26 degrees Celsius this afternoon, and the warming trend will continue through tomorrow. However, unlike yesterday, air quality will be an issue, especially in the capital area, with bad air quality expected throughout the day today. Meanwhile, the East Coast continues to stay much cooler today. Some parts of Gangwon-do province will see highs in the upper teens, but Daejeon and Daegu will be topping out at 25 degrees Celsius this afternoon under sunny skies nationwide, but UV rays are much stronger now, so have your sun protection ready. Then another round of rain moves in on Friday for southern regions in Jeju, taking the edge of the heat for a moment, but that's not going to last long.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.